Imagine a world without mid-2000s mega hit You're Beautiful from James Blunt. That could have been the reality if he hadn't made the tough decision to leave the British Army and forge a successful stint in the music industry and a burgeoning side gig as a pub and restaurant owner. He's overcome many hurdles to shake off the one-hit wonder moniker and has enlisted some friends like Ed Sheeran as he reshapes his music career.
One of the first things I noticed with the new album is the sound. I think for some people they'd say, that doesn't sound, I like it. It doesn't sound like James Blunt. Tell us about that process and maybe what it says about you as an artist that, you know, kind of fearless to go with a really unique sound compared to maybe what people would have normally expected from you.
Yeah, well, you know what, I've done 4 albums in the past. They're all connected and related. They are one man on guitar singing some pretty miserable songs, and I love them. And this album really, I suppose, having spoken to my producer who did the last 4, Tom Rothrock, said, come on, you know, it needs to be special. And perhaps more diverse is what I took from that. And so I went out and wrote over 100 songs and then have collected the best 10. And of course, I still have those songs that I think my fans in the past would still like. Those touching, emotional, heartfelt songs are on there. But at the same time, it's not just that. It's got some confident, as I say, diverse, bold songs on there. And so it's perhaps just richer and perhaps describes me a little bit better. And I think if you didn't like what I did before, you'd be hopefully pleasantly surprised by what I've done this time round.
It's always fascinating to look at someone's journey, the road they take to where they ultimately end up. Yours is a fascinating one in the sense that it was during your time in the Army that you made that final decision, okay, I am going to pursue this, and you made this incredibly successful transition. Something I've heard you talk about is maybe not overthinking things in the grand scheme of things. If you had been really thinking about how many people are trying to make it succeed in the music business, who knows, maybe you would have thought differently about the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I think what you're touching on is when I first went to Los Angeles and thought, you know, it's all going to be fine. I'm going to, you know, get a record deal and I'm going to record an album and people are going to love it. And then when you arrive in LA, you realize there are thousands of people with the same ambition and the same dream. And I was pretty fortunate that when I'd arrived, I had that record deal, so I had my one foot on the ladder. But to be able to see those thousands of people is a pretty scary moment. But yeah, but I think if you try and work out what other people want all the time, if you try and appease what other people might hunger for, then on an album it will be neither the black that they might want or the white that they might want. It'll be a grey in the middle. So I think you have to, have great confidence in yourself, a belief in yourself, and follow your gut instinct on things.
When people look back at the success of Back to Bedlam, just absolutely incredible, happens so quickly, sets Guinness records, it's so successful. You've talked about some of the amazing things that came from that, the ability to immediately jump out on tour and, you know, huge crowds. I wonder from a business perspective what was going through your mind as that was all unfolding.
Well, I think things are moving pretty fast at that stage, and so I think the importance was to kind of get a really great team around who could advise me. I'd stepped out of the Army and didn't know much about the business side of things, and I've always said the most important decision of my life was to find the right manager in the music business so that it would allow me to do music while I had someone who knew the business to deal with the business. And then beyond that, a team that I tour with. So, you know, once upon a time I was in the Army and had a tight-knit little troupe of people. Now on the road, I have something which is really similar. A tour manager is kind of like a troop sergeant, and the crew are kind of like the corporals in the band. Well, they're kind of like troopers, and it's a tight-knit little team. And the similarities are very similar. And I think it's being able to have experts, trust people, be able to delegate out, and great advice.
For years, people have been talking about your Twitter feed, which is part of a bigger story of you embracing some of the silliness that goes along with being someone who's in the public spotlight, someone who has such a huge hit in You're Beautiful, and you're always having fun with this. However, what people don't talk as much about is how you got some feedback early on as a Twitter user from your label. Maybe you should be careful with this tone that you're taking, but you really own that. And now a lot of people look at what you do as this model of how to embrace the online world. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I think it was interesting to me that record labels, they kind of want to market the things that they see working, and they push that really hard. So my album, for me, originally was a kind of on an independent album produced by an indie producer, Tom Rothrock. Custard Records was my label, with Linda Perry as the head of it, the singer of Four Non Blondes, and we made a pretty kind of indie-sounding record. And then it started lighting up, but lots of people enjoyed it, both male and female, young and old. But then I think as they saw a spike in a female audience of a certain age, then the marketing really directed towards them and only them. Which is great that you can then start that ball rolling and make it bigger. But I think it was then at the detriment of everyone else. Then you start to lose men as they think, oh, maybe if we're being told this is only music for women, then you start to lose them. And I think perhaps through something like Twitter, I have my own voice and my own marketing, which was slightly more balanced. And it was, just as much male-centric as female-centric.
This is a show called Sidelines, and away from the stage, you have other interests. You're a passionate skier. You are also a restaurant owner. Can you explain that to us a little bit?
Yeah, and it's not something I'll necessarily make money on ever, but it's been great fun doing. But I've gone into business with Lawrence Dallaglio, who is was the England rugby captain. So he doesn't have much in the restaurant experience. With Carl Fogarty, who is 7 times motorcycle world champion, he again has no restaurant experience, and me. And we have a restaurant on the top of a mountain, which is only open for lunches, only open on good weather days, and only open for the 4 months of the season. So in a business sense, we're limited, but we break even, and we have the best time of our lives. We can go up to the top of a mountain, have long lunches with friends, ski down at the end of the day.
And I also saw that you got into the pub business, maybe to help save a local pub more than a business opportunity. What's the story there?
Yeah, exactly. I'm in a really lucky position where I can do some fun things, and I do music every day, and it's the most awesome experience of my life. But when the occasional fun thing comes up, I say, okay, I'll give it a go. And my local pub was being sold off to be turned into residential property, and I thought, you know what? I'll take it on and see if I can become a pub landlord.
But given that you're becoming a pub landlord, you've got the restaurant in Switzerland, you made this amazing transition from the army to the music world. I can't help but think that there are some other areas you're still thinking about, curious about, maybe as an investor, maybe as business ideas in the future, maybe with the music business constantly changing. What do you think about?
Yeah, I think I'm still probably looking for that at this stage, but I think I really love what I do of music. I'm incredibly lucky to be on this tour of 18 months touring with Ed Sheeran at the moment here in Canada, and to get up and play songs is absolutely fascinating. But I think to only do that through one's life, it doesn't require that much brain power to repeat the same song as long as I remember the words. So I think the mind, it will never settle and always look for something to do.
Well, you mentioned touring and your big network of friends and collaborators from the music industry. Maybe there's some pieces of advice you received along the way that are worth sharing. Probably the most obvious person to single out would be Elton John, an early champion in your corner. Was there anything he said to you early on that still sticks with you today?
Yeah, I think his was simply to do with the media, which he's had his own battles with along the way, and so have I. And his wording was perhaps more flowery than I would say, but he was definitely saying don't take it to heart in any way, and do your thing without caring what others might think.